Hey, hey guys. Hope everyone is well. This video, trying to keep it short and sweet, is basically just a quick update on 0.07, which is the most recent version we released to the backers. Just gonna go through basically some of the changes we've made, why we've made them, and just give you a general update of the state of the game at the moment. So yeah, I'll get straight into it, to be fair. So me and Dad have been working on a couple different changes, with Dado focusing primarily on the animation and me focusing primarily on the life cycle of the game itself. So some of the things Dado's been working on, the first thing has been mirroring. So for the animations, we now are able to mirror the animations for both feet. So before you could predominantly only take off with one foot, whereas now we are able to take off with either foot. So the animation is mirrored to both left and right feet, so that if the left foot takeoff is the best animation to play at the time, it will do that. Or if the right foot takeoff is the best animation to play at the time, it will do that instead. So this just increases the coverage you have for the various animations, and it kind of just extends the range in which you can perform the best animation for. So it's really important and really important thing to have for both locomotion and your parkour control system. Another thing Dado made was some changes to the contact points. So if you see here, if I go up and do a little cat pass, it will now pick the best contact point at all times to perform the jump over. So like there, that was pretty much the ideal. So if you see there, picks the best contact point on the obstacle to place the hands and vault over. And that contact point is basically the contact point used in selecting the animation. So we've changed it so that the contact points picked for the animations now are now ideal and optimal. And this goes into basically the next one, which is we're now able to jump when we're very close to the wall. So before, I don't know, a couple versions back, if you guys remember, we had it where if you were too close to the wall and you tried to jump, you would actually end up not being able to jump, and it would play this kind of failed cat pass move because you're too close to the wall. And now, although this is realistic, as you might be too close to the walls most of the time, we did find that a lot of newer players would actually always end up being too close to the wall whenever they wanted to do their jump. And this was because generally just lack of experience. You know, if you haven't played parkour before and you don't know the build up required or the speed of the character, which is expected, you're very likely to end up being too close to the wall when you want to do a jump. So now we've added it so that even if you are too close to the wall, you're still able to perform the optimal jump. So if you see there, it was very close to the wall, but it was still able to do a cat pass without too much warping backwards. So like you see there again. So that was a really cool feature we decided to add, because that was a problem we saw that was kept creeping up on us. Another thing, I'll just go over here and show you. I'm currently on the keyboard and mouse, but if we go over here, run over here, and we try and jump over this obstacle, there we go, that's fine there. But then if we go and we run at it straight on, you're not able to jump over it. Now the reason being is because we can't jump over obstacles that are too high. So if you see just like that, it tried to jump over this big old statue, and it failed in its process because it's just too high. So you're only able to jump over obstacles within a certain range. So what's quite interesting, when I jumped before, I jumped over its foot, so that was within its range, but the entire statue itself, it's too high. So we have like thresholds for which the player can jump, and obviously these will be eventually gameplay driven. So if you're in different characters and whatnot, you can jump different heights. But yeah, we thought that was an important feature to have, to be fair. So that included that. Another which I think really cool feature, to be fair, is this slow-mo mode. Now, Dado added this basically to give an aesthetic and cinematic feel. It's sort of like a Burnout style camera. We have another video on the YouTube page that kind of goes over it, but it's actually wicked. So if you jump basically and you press the right mouse button at any point, you can basically slow down time with like some time dilation. And yeah, it slows down time and allows you to perform some more cinematic tricks. It's a really cool feature, to be fair, and I haven't stopped playing with it. Yeah, I really can't, to be honest. It's just too fun to play with. So, like, that is so fun. um, yeah, no, it seems really simple, but it's a really fun feature to have and quite important, I think, in terms of when we look forward to people trying to create more cinematic shots, cinematic gameplay, or like tournaments where artistic style is paramount. So that's an additional feature we added as well. And yeah, those obviously I've talked through this quite quickly because I don't want this video too long. I don't think it ever needs to be. Um, but yeah, those are a very quick summary of some of the changes that is made. Um, in his new version. Obviously not to sell it short at any point or anything like that. So, but yeah, that's a quick run through of some of those changes. Back to the start. Now, as you can see, one of the changes I've made, I just don't know why I restarted, to be honest. I could have just restarted. But yeah, so I'm gonna go to mine. Before I do that, I'm just gonna connect my controller up, so I can really showcase you guys what's going on. So one of the main things, I'm not playing on controller now, by the way. I'm now playing on gamepad. With my versions, one of the main things that we added, as you can see, we have both keyboard and mouse and gamepad integration. So you can play with the keyboard and mouse, as you can play with the gamepad. So one of the first things we added is a change of Drew's voiceover and the HUD cues depending on what input device you're using. So if you're using keyboard and mouse, the HUD cues will be specific to that of keyboard and mouse. And if you're using a gamepad, the HUD cues will be specific to that of gamepad. So I performed just some gamepad detection or like input detection to recognize which input device you're using and change the set of tutorial HUD cues depending on that. And then we just made a bit more of a generalized voiceover so that it applies to both HUD cues. And yeah, Drew was awesome at getting that to us. So a lot of thanks to him. Another thing we added really was with his integration with both keyboard and mouse and controller, we've been looking at expanding the UI. And the first thing really we did was add a little graphics quality settings. So if you see in here, we have a cool little menu where you can change all the graphic settings. We have like a generalized section where you can specify more general settings. So you can have low, medium, high, and epic. And then for the more techie people who really like to go into their settings and who understand these settings a bit more, they can go ahead and advance it, reduce it, specialize, tweak this and play around with different configurations for their specific system to find out what works best for them. So just so that the user experience can be a lot better for the backers while they're testing the game. But yeah, that's pretty much what we've done in regards to that. One thing I also added was some gamepad integration for the UI. It's currently, a lot of other UIs don't have it, but mine currently is set up with gamepad integration, which is something you'd think Unreal would do by default, but they don't. And is a very it's one of the things where most people wouldn't even notice. It took time, as it seems like such a trivial thing, but it took ages because of how it is, because of the lack of support for it. So yeah, it's funny how, and the Dada was saying it too, the things that take the smallest amount of time, like the slow-mo effects, which in the controller is B, and I just love doing, is the most fun to do. But the thing that take longest time, like gamepad integration, and this seems trivial. So, but that's part of game development, I guess. So yeah, that's my gamepad menu and the gamepad menu integration. Another thing I did was a session marker. So the people had been asking for this for a while. So yeah, we decided to add a cool little session marker here. Just a little particle system that identifies your location. You hit left on D-pad to set it up if it doesn't exist, and left again to go back to it. You can, if you hold down the session marker for a second and then let go, it gets rid of the session marker, and then you can place another one. So that's pretty much it. It's a really simple system to set up. I've actually done a video explaining how I set it all up, and code and whatnot. So yeah, go watch that if you haven't. But yeah, it's really simple, but it's quite an important system in terms of the gameplay and being able to set up and try different lines. So yeah, it's really cool to have. But one change I am going to make to that is we got some feedback, and it was like holding down the stick, you don't know how long you need to hold it down for to lose the marker. So instead of having to hold it down and then release it, if you hold it down for long enough, I'm then going to just destroy the marker itself rather than requiring a release. And that's the only change I'm going to make to the session marker for the next version. So yeah. And the final thing I'm going to touch on is the scoring system we've added. Now, we had a scoring system before, but it really didn't have any it didn't have any meaning or purpose really. It was very trivial in terms of how it scored things and like why it scored things the way they were. And yeah, it didn't feel rewarding to get a certain score. So now we just added some more sense to this entire scoring system, really. So the way we do it at the moment now is different jumps yield different scores based on the type of jump they are. And this equates to somewhat in real life. So like the reverse vault is a difficult jump, so that yields a higher score and whatnot than a cat pass per se, because that is more of a standardized, well-used jump. And so these different scores, they're not the only thing that we take into account in this process. Another thing that we take into account is the time between repetitive jumps. So we wanted to reward basically creativity in your lines and trying out different jumps rather than just being able to spam the same jump over and over again. Because I find that when I play games like skating, that when it came to like scoring systems, it was very much a case of the jumps that everyone would know, the most difficult jumps. It would just end up that everyone would keep spamming them out because they were so high scoring and they really weren't punished for using the same move quite heavily enough. So you just spam the same set of moves and then return back to it if it was going to give you about the higher score again. So it really didn't like push for creativity in lines, especially when it came to scoring. So one thing that we're pushing for is that creativity when it comes to scoring. So if you're looking purely for the aesthetic aspect, it doesn't matter. But in terms of scoring, switching up your moves does reward you. So firstly, we have a penalty on doing a repetitive move. And to implement that, I basically added a cooldown where if you do a single move, it places a cooldown on it. And that cooldown reduces the score in which you can achieve of the base score of the jump. So if I do a cat pass over this, I get a score of 79, and then do a cat pass over this, the score is drastically reduced for a couple other reasons, but one being that it's on cooldown, and so the maximum score achieved is minimized based on how far into its cooldown is. So if its cooldown's at 0 and it has no cooldown, you can achieve the maximum score for it. If it's a max cooldown, you would achieve the minimum score for it as a base score. So that was a way of basically penalizing repetitive moves and encouraging creativity. One other thing that we did as well that I think is very important is factor in speed into the scoring process. So if you see here, I ran at some fairly decent speed for that cat pass. If I then was to go slowly, bad animation there, the score would be lower. So there, a score of 61 on the cat pass. And then if I was to, despite the cooldown, build up more speed, exact same score, there we go. There's a cooldown, but the score was almost the same. So that's because I was moving a bit faster. So despite the cooldown, the score was actually almost just as high because my speed was greater. And so these are things that we factored in the process because we want to reward moves being done at speed, because in real life, the higher your speed, the higher risk. And so in game, the higher your speed, the higher your risk, because it's more difficult to put together moves, but also the higher your reward, as your scoring will be higher. So that's one thing that we factored in the scoring system. like there. That's perfect contact points. And this just looks really cool. And yeah, one thing we also want to do with the slow-mo mode is make that gameplay driven. So being able to detect either really good jumps that then trigger that gameplay stuff, or yeah, different events and environments. Say if you're jumping between a gap in a building, we want this slow-mo effect to take place, you know, because it's gonna look really cool. So yeah, that's some gameplay driven ideas we have for that slow-mo. But yeah, and another thing I want to add for the scoring is basically a combo multiplier. So if you chain together tricks, it starts to boost your score up. So putting together bigger lines yields a bigger score. So that's just, again, rewarding having greater like fluidity of a line or longer lines and things. Basically, if in real life the mind that wall. If in real life your the difficulty of what you would do in real life, we want it to equate to the difficulty in game and also the score you then receive subsequently. So those are just some of the things we're looking at in regards to scoring. I feel like I've been waffling for quite a while, so I'm gonna leave it there. That's basically just a quick rundown of some of the updates we've been making in this new version. We have a lot of changes still to come, and I'll tease it now with the inclusion of multiplayer. So we're just gonna tease that. But yeah, we're gonna keep you updated, and I'll be putting out more videos this week, me and Dado, as well as streaming. So if you guys want to keep updated and see what we're doing in regards to all that, just subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitch, and yeah, we'll keep you updated throughout the process. But yeah, awesome guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.